Hey everybody, this is Perch. I think people write in sometimes confused as to where I'm coming from, and sometimes they take the place of kind of the night letter of whose side are you really on? But in a lot of cases, I think the problem is we've had so many videos and so many comments based around kind of culture war-ish topics that you find yourself having to argue and defend against stuff that no reasonable person, if they just listened, would have questions about. So here's a mail asking a question, which I think is a pretty obvious, easy question to answer. But we'll ask it anyway. And I kind of will go into the, well, you'll see. Let me just read the mail. It says, "Hey Perch, I've been listening to your show for a while now, and I generally appreciate your commentary. I don't agree with everything you have to say, but that's okay. Nobody does. Nobody agrees with everything I have to say. That's depressing. Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, we'll carry on then. One question I have for you though is how you feel about gay characters in comics. Do you like them? From some of your commentary, I would guess that you don't. I know a lot of people on YouTube don't like the gays in comics, and I think that's a shame. So I hope you're not one of those people. But what is your feeling about LGBTQ characters and themes in comics? P.S. This is not a troll. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for not being a troll. Um, Look, a short answer here is they're fine. I mean, what do you mean that? Like, what do I think about gay characters? Some of my two of my favorite characters are Apollo and Midnighter. Legit, some of my favorite characters. I think the dynamic they did with the two of them, it worked. What's kind of funny is it's in effect the odd couple, in that you have somebody who's more heroic, you have somebody who's more street level violent. It's like if Batman and Superman were in a relationship together. That's basically what you got. And I like those two characters. I think the different writers from Ellis to Millar, they've tried, or they have tried. They've written those characters. I think that was one of Steve Orlando's better books, honestly. When he was doing, no, wait a minute, was that Steve Orlando? I don't fucking remember actually. But regardless, I think that I like those characters. So no, I have no problem with LGBTQ representation in comics. Some people do. Some people get very fixated on kind of the percentage of queer characters to the human population and all. I mean, you could do that. I get it. I mean, the real argument that's being proven there is simply hey, it seems like every comic is including LGBTQ representation, and does every comic need to include it? And I guess my answer to that is no, but maybe it's the wrong question. The right question would be, hey, who's doing it well? And to me, that's probably the issue I have with LGBTQ representation in comics is not that it's there. It's that it's usually done, abnormally poorly. It's usually it feels like the writers try to shove something in where it doesn't belong. No jokes, please. But it feels like they're trying to say, I want an Eisner, therefore I'm going to need to put a gay character into this comic, and that's what people on Twitter and TikTok want. So I'll throw one in there. It usually feels just. It doesn't feel like a natural, organic story. It's kind of like how, and my wife picks this up all the time, and it drives her crazy. We're watching a show, and the show could be, whatever. We're still watching that absolutely shitty, where the hell is it going show Servant on Apple TV. It's a M. Night Shyamalan, and it sucks. But in that show, every now and then they meet the neighbors. When you meet the neighbors, it's kind of like in that show, by the way, if you watch it, you'll notice that they're constantly FaceTiming each other. And then you're like, why is there so much? And they call it FaceTime. Like, hey, do you want to FaceTime? Let's FaceTime. I'm going to FaceTime. I'm going to take the baby out for a walk. I'm going to put you on FaceTime so you can see it. There's more instances of FaceTime in that show than any other show that I've ever seen. And you wonder why that is. And you're like, oh, this was paid for by Apple. Okay, I get it now. This is brand placement. And it feels, it feels very abnormal. They'll come up like there's places where it's like, I need to make a phone call real quick. Quick, get them on FaceTime. And then like early on in that show, there's even like absolutely cringy dialogue of like, I can see you really clearly. Boy, this picture is amazing on this phone. I can't believe the quality. Wow. Great quality on this device that is available in your Apple Store right now for only $14.99. It was a commercial. It felt like that sometimes. Well, a lot of the LGBTQ representation in shows and in comics has that same feel to it. It feels like it's product placement as opposed to a natural part to the story. And you can always kind of tell, this was the same, my wife gets annoyed, like in this servant show, they're like, hey, let's go meet the neighbors. And they go meet the neighbors. And it's like, and the character is like, we just moved in. Me and my wife, it's a woman talking, me and my wife are very pleased to be here. My wife and I, it's like, okay, stop with like, you've introduced several, opposite sex couples. And the person doesn't, the woman who they're talking to doesn't go, my husband my husband and I moved in here. My husband is over there and he is my husband, who is a man, my husband. They don't do that because it would sound shitty. The dialogue would be terrible. So you can kind of tell when the writers of the show are trying to, I don't know, just tap into like, hey, let's do this for Twitter. And it always feels super, super tacked on. And then very, very cynically, it always feels like something that with a very tiny amount of editing, you could just clip right out when you go to China, which they do. So so my problem, and it is my only problem. Well, no, so I guess there's two parts. Well, this is the first one. My problem with LGBTQ representation in comics comes down to I don't like it when it feels like product placement. I liked and like Midnighter and Apollo. Feels natural. I think even the super cringy, weird ass way they had North Star come out in later issues, I thought they did a good job with that. I think there's lots of examples of characters who are gay in Marvel and DC and in the comics, where they're doing their thing. I mean, look, you read the Authority, Midnighter and Apollo got married in that comic, for Christ's sake. I mean, they would talk about, I'm gonna take you out to dinner and cuddle and tickle and like it, like they'd flirt with each other on the page, but then on the next page, when it's time for a battle, the two of them are kicking ass, and it didn't feel like the comic didn't know what to do with these characters. And so that's my problem. By the way, if you're AIPT or some of these other big news sites who like to shit on this channel for being one of the baddies, my point, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna turn it around on you. I think you're the baddies because in my mind, I want comics with characters who actually do something and have actual well-rounded stories and personalities and actually drive the plot forward. I want that. So what I want is more page time devoted to queer characters. I want them to have a personality that is not, oh, by the way, I am a lesbian, so that means I fuck girls. That's what I do. That's my personality. Girl fucker. Like that. Like it needs to be more than that. And if you think I'm exaggerating, look at some of these books. They're parodies of characters in them. And it feels, I think that is, frankly, I think that is the right term. It's product placement. It's not a story. Because whenever you get a comic that uses LGBTQ characters and they have a story and a plot behind them, they tend to be good. Like, look, a lot of what Neil Gaiman did with Sandman back in the day, Shade the Changing Man with Milligan, and I mean, hell, a lot of the Vertigo stuff. Look, Rachel Pollack did a bunch of weird shit in Doom Patrol, and it was weird. And you may love it, you may hate it. It never felt like there was some kind of editorial mandate of like, every 4.5 pages, you need to have at least one gay character. Like it didn't feel jarring. It felt natural. It felt normal. Same thing with like Willingham did some stuff in Babel's. I mean, you could go on and on and on with good examples of how this has been done over the last 30 to 40 years. Plenty. And if you go to the indie books, you get a lot more. But, when you do, when you, this is a horrible example, but when you have like, I Am Not Starfire, which is a book, again, nobody read, but some people read it. But by and large, that book reads like a bingo card of tropes designed to target Twitter. It's a very boring, nonsense story whose biggest kind of, egregious mistake is the fact that they're trying to sell it into schools, and the book contains a school shooting. That's the biggest problem with that book. Wait a minute, am I getting the right one? Is that I've got it wrong. Sorry. I was actually being. I Am Not Starfire is also shitty. Nubia, real one. Nubia, I apologize. I apologize, YouTube audience. Nubia, real one, which had the same problems, by the way. The characters that were gay they were inserted in there because they had to place them somewhere. They don't have any point. You can erase them from the book and it doesn't matter. And I said, the biggest sin of that book is that it was dull. And then, again, you're trying to sell into a school and you have a school shooting in the book. That's going to limit your ability to sell into a school, you dumbass. So to the writer of this mail, look, no, I do not have any problem with LGBTQ representation in comics. I just actually want it to be good. And good is not a code word for less. It just means good. And to put a point on it, like, I don't want to see, product placement straight couples. I don't be reading Iron Man, and then in the middle of it, we have a guy who like comes into Iron Man going, I like to fuck girls. That's what I do because I'm a man who likes to fuck girls because I'm straight. I'm straight, and straight guys like pussy. Like that. Like, no. Do you want to? That would be a funny comic, but no, I don't want to read that comic. So give these characters some airtime. Actually, do it right. That's all I'm saying. And you've got several examples to draw from that have done it right. Anyway, thanks for listening.